All right, guys, we are back. This is the AJ Show, and it is episode 19. I'm here with my co host, Adam Grego, also known as Adam Steele. And we're going to be talking about superstars today, or rather, the Superstar Club. I saw, a really interesting article on NFL.com. There's not a ton of information out there by Dan Hansis, and it's called 2021 NFL Superstar Club. Josh Allen breaks in, Big Ben bumped. So I want to go through his stuff, go through each one, um, and then basically after that, we can kind of make our own superstar club, air quotes needed. But yeah, welcome back, guys. And how you doing, Adam? How's your day going?
Doing good, doing good. It's a little gloomy out, but yeah, it's a Sunday, so ready
Yeah,
to ready to just kind of get back into the swing of the week, you know what I mean?
I feel that. I feel that. Well, yeah. So I mean, I know the title says it all. Your guy getting bumped out of the superstar
Yeah.
club, air quotes needed. I just thought it was
Yep.
interesting because I mean, I haven't seen an article like this throughout the off season, and so I'll just go right into it. Tom Brady in, which I thought was really funny because hasn't he always been in the superstar club? If a guy is, considered the GOAT of the sport by many, wouldn't he already be in there? I don't really understand that. And then Drew Brees out, but I mean he retired. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
do you have any comments on those two?
No, not really. Tom Brady should be in there, right? And Drew Brees retired, so makes sense that he's out. I understand putting Josh Allen in. He had a great year. I think it's a little soon to call him a superstar.
I
I
do too.
think anyone you call a superstar should have done what they've done to garner even being in the discussion for at least, really, in my opinion, like 3 years, because 1 to 2 years of greatness can be a fluke. We've seen it with plenty of players, right, who have 1 to 2 great seasons. But when you start putting them back to back to back, is when I'll start to be like, okay, he's for real.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's just weird to see Brady there, simply put. I mean, it's just like, why is he there?
Right.
Breeze, yeah, not a shock to me. Yeah, so Josh Allen's in, Ben is out on the next round. Um, I mean, it's interesting with Big Ben because like, what do you call a superstar? Are we talking about play? Are we talking about glitz and glamour? Because I never look at no one ever puts Ben in that category. He is not talked about in the same breath as Tom Brady normally.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that he was in that club to begin with. Um, and the fact that like he's out of it, I'm more just shocked that he's in it to begin with. And then Josh Allen comes in, so I mean, I get the Josh Allen hype, right? He looks the part, and he's the fresh face, the
Hmm.
young guy. And
Yep.
I get why Ben is quote unquote out because he's the older guy that people want to retire, and they're trying to write off his
Oh yeah.
career. What are your thoughts on that? That round. I mean, we already kind of talked about Josh Allen, but Ben Roethlisberger.
It's hard to argue with anyone who doesn't want to say Ben is elite anymore. And I mean, I don't know that I would even say he's elite or a superstar anymore. I would say he's definitely better than people are giving him credit for at this point. Um, I would say, I mean, I would put him last season. Honestly, people want to say after last season he's like out of the top 15 even. But you can make an argument that he's, even after last season, he's like anywhere from 10 to, really for me, like 12, 10 to 12, somewhere around there. I wouldn't even put him as low as 15, to be quite honest with you. But I mean, if you're outside the top 10 or you're in the top 10, it's like, or towards the end of the 10, you're probably not a superstar anymore, right? Like superstars reserved for, like, I would say top five. And I think Ben has definitely had multiple seasons where he's been a top five quarterback, even though people don't want to give him that credit, whatever. I saw what I saw. I know what he did. So he's had years where, in a run, where he was a superstar, but calling him a superstar now, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I have him top 15. I wouldn't call him a superstar anymore. I think at one point he was. Coach Dante says, "What up? It's 8-2 cool." Says, "Hi. How's it going, guys? Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday." So the next round, Adam, is it's a little out there. You be
Okay.
ready for this. Kyler Murray in. And that's
Okay,
not
wait.
even that's no
If
no, that's not even
Kyler's
the
in,
weird
Ken
one.
is in.
That's not
Ken's
even
in
the
if
weird
Kyler's
one.
in. That's
You
so
ready for who's out?
Lamar.
Carson Wentz.
Oh.
I'm
Oh.
like, I love Carson Wentz. I don't know if Carson Wentz was ever in. He was on the cusp of
I
being
think he
in.
was in his MVP year, but then
Yeah,
go back to the argument where you got to do it for a couple seasons. So,
that's exactly my case because
yeah.
2017 was his best season. I think after that, you saw a bunch of really good play
Mm.
mixed with some bad play, never elite play like 2017. So, yeah, Kyler to me, and I love Kyler. He was QB1 in that draft for me. I just don't. I can't call Kyler a elite quarterback yet. Um, he hasn't been to. He's played now, 2 seasons. He has not been to a Super Bowl. He has not been to a playoff game. It's not like Patrick Mahomes where it's like 2 Super Bowls back to back. A guy that really carries that offense, really showed you. Kyler, I mean, they had an opportunity to make the playoffs, and they failed to do that last year. So I really like Kyler, and I think that this team can make it this year. Albeit, I think they're the 3 seed in the NFC West. But I just don't. I think this is too high, and I think the biggest thing that I would say about Kyler is that Kyler you could call an elite fantasy quarterback, right? Because of what he does, the points he racks up. He's potentially going to be the number one QB in fantasy because of his running ability. But to call him an elite quarterback, because this is not a fantasy article, this is an actual, just a regular NFL article, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Yeah,
I'm not that high on him. I think he's just I mean, I like the offense that they have. I like
mhm.
what they do with him, but as like a quarterback, I don't think he's special by any means. I think if he didn't have his legs, he'd be 15 or lower, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's right out there, right outside the top 10, maybe even 10 for me, but that's not elite. I don't think like top 10 quarterbacks are elite. I think that's the upper echelon is elite.
Yeah,
So,
like 3 to 5 any given year is elite.
yeah. So, to me, he's not elite. And then Carson Wentz to me was never elite. He was on the cusp of being elite, consistently elite. I mean, 2017 was a different story. Really like him, obviously. Love that he's back with Reich. Could he get there? I don't even know that. I think he's going to be really good with Reich, but I don't know if he'll ever sniff the elite category. But if he does, all the power to him. I like him. He's easy to root for, just like Kyler. I like Kyler as well. But I just don't think either are elite or have been elite at this point in the NFL. Now, the updated quarterback membership, he puts all of these names together, and I don't hate it except for a few. Okay, so I'll just get into it. Josh Allen, number one, not in order, just like, going through them. Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson. I don't hate that, but I love Lamar as much as anyone. I don't know if he's necessarily like on that level of like Rodgers and Mahomes, and
Oh, that's
I think
dumb to say
he's a
he
step
is.
below, but
He's more
personally.
than a step below, personally, in my opinion.
So then you have
He's
Patrick Mahomes, you have
hold on.
Kyler Murray.
He's like I would put him and Kyler in the same kind of conversation. Without his legs, what is Lamar? He's definitely not a great quarterback.
I don't know.
You
You know
cannot
my
make the
thoughts on
argument
him.
that he is a good quarterback.
I think he
And
is
when
a
it
good
comes
quarterback
how?
because I think he's a solid passer. He needs to get better. Obviously, he's generally accurate, not pinpoint accurate. But I'm really curious to see this year because I think there's no excuses after this year. I think he's got the best weapons of his entire career. And I think, a guy like Bateman, I think it's going to be huge for him. I think Sammy Watkins, if he stays healthy, could be interesting. You now have a pretty good run game again. I mean, they were really good last year too. But you get a second year guy in J.K. Dobbins, a good offensive line, really good defense. So I don't really think there are excuses for Lamar this year, and I do expect
I
him to
don't think
take that
there's
next
ever
step.
really
Um,
been excuses for him, to be honest.
but with Patrick Mahomes, obviously, probably number one if you ask anybody. Kyler Murray, no, we've already discussed this. I don't understand why he's there. Dak Prescott was very interesting. Now, Dak is an interesting one because everyone likes to dog on Dak, but little did they know that he was on pace for over 6,000 yards last year, was easily going to win MVP by statistical output if he went on that same trajectory. He gets
What
hurt.
week did he go down?
Want to say week
6,
7.
7? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he had
like
like the
Dak, yeah.
best
I mean,
7-game stretch.
I would take Dak over Lamar.
I might. I really like Dak. And I don't, I understand the problem is he's on the Cowboys. So a lot of fans, if you're not a Cowboys fan, it's like you love him or you hate him. So I think he gets a lot of that. Plus, I think the offensive line, that argument that his offensive line is so much better and all that, like, I don't think that applies anymore because I think his offensive line wasn't very good last year and he made the most of it. Plus, Ezekiel Elliott, like, that's a guy who's not elite anymore. Like, he absolutely was a non-factor in the running game. And so I think he really had to, elevate everyone around him, which he did. Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan's won MVP. Matt Ryan's shown you he can elevate the play with everyone around him. Matt Ryan has shown you that he's been consistent his whole career. So I don't hate it. I don't necessarily think that Matt Ryan is elite at this point.
He has Matt Ryan as elite.
I think in the long game, Matt Ryan, if you put him there, fine. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I love Matt Ryan, but I don't know if I'd put him elite. Deshaun Watson, talent-wise, yes, but he hasn't won anything. So there's that.
Yeah.
And who knows if he plays this year. So you have to keep playing in order to keep that status. And then the last guy here is Russell Wilson. So that means they have Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, and Matt Ryan and Lamar Jackson guys over Matthew Stafford, which I see some Rams fans in here that are freaking out over. Dak sold me he can play. This is Champ from LA. He's the best out of that draft between Wentz, Goff, Dak. I think Wentz can push him, but Dak, damn, I hate saying it, Dak is good. Wentz, what? I'll judge him with some players around him. His 2020 season was awful, but 2019 with some weapons was special. Philly was trash without him. I'm wondering if Cliff is going to keep his job. His arm surprised me, but his elusiveness isn't what I expected. His size, neither is the speed. About Kyler, he is nowhere near elite. So sorry, I had to read all that to catch up. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think that there's a huge snub here, Matthew Stafford, who I do think he's better than Prescott by a margin, by a small margin.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's definitely better than Kyler, and I think he's better than Matt Ryan. And that's what, and I think he's better than Josh Allen too, because Josh Allen had one really good year, but I haven't seen this consistently. So I mean, we'll see. But I think Tannehill has an argument. He had 40 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, he kind of gets left out of these conversations just because of the career arc that he had. And also, it's hard to say because that team just fits him so well. It could be like
interesting without Arthur Smith.
It could be like the Baker Mayfield effect in a way, just because of how they built that team, and he almost doesn't have to carry much of a burden. I mean, still makes the plays when he needs to. Well, I guess not always, right? Because they haven't made deep runs, but throughout the season, when he has to make throws, he'll make the throws, but he never has to really, take over a football game. So for that is probably why I would leave him out of like quote unquote, or I would leave him out of being an elite quarterback.
So Champ from LA says Tannehill is turning into an elite player. So that's it for the quarterbacks. Like I said, I don't think there are too many snubs. I think there are some guys that don't belong. But now they're running backs here, and they start off. Nick Chubb is in. Ezekiel Elliott is out. I agree. I think Elliott was out for me the year prior. I've seen a significant drop off with him, although he's now supposedly in great shape, so we will see. But Nick Chubb, to me, is somebody that, I mean, coming out of college, it was either him or Sony coming out of the same school at Georgia, and I always like Nick Chubb, and I think the ACL tear, kind of redirected everyone's view on him, and
Yeah.
they didn't just stick by their guns. A lot of people bailed, even though you saw what Gurley did with the ACL, you saw what Adrian Peterson. So, I mean, we saw examples of how guys come back from it, and Chubb did, but I don't think many people were expecting the way he did. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Kareem Hunt is a top 12 running back, and he has him as his guy to take off the load. But Nick Chubb, with or without Kareem Hunt, is an elite running back.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's great, man. It sucks going against him 2 times a year. He's really good. He'll beat you with anything, speed, power. He's got great vision. Yeah, I love Nick Chubb. And it's a pain that him and Kareem Hunt are on the same team. I mean, really?
Oh, yeah. That's
like,
just
seriously.
Nuts.
Like,
yeah.
try finally wearing Nick Chubb down. You're like, oh, finally we got a couple stops with him. And then they just throw Kareem Hunt in. Fresh legs. Kareem Hunt, who in his own right is, a top, you could argue, top 10 quarter or running back. If he just had more of the touches, the things he could do. So,
it's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It really is. Chubb led the entire NFL with 124 broken tackles on 488 carries over the last 2 seasons per PFF. Jeez. That's just nuts. He's really hard to bring down. He gets hurt, but he comes back and he's stronger than ever. So, yeah, to me, he's absolutely, an elite back. He's in that club. Elliott, I just don't think is a superstar anymore. I just don't. I do not think Elliott is a superstar. I think Elliott, at this point, is average until I see this season. And keep in mind, he's only 20, like he's still 25 years old. Like he's super young. But, I still worry about him as far as, keeping him up there. I just haven't seen it over the last 2 years. So we will see. Now, that was it as far as, who he bumped in, who he bumped out. Updated running back membership. He has Saquon Barkley as the superstar, which I agree. I think he's the best running back in football. Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. I'm a little surprised Aaron Jones isn't in there because I think Aaron Jones has turned himself into an elite running back for the Packers. Aside from that, I don't really have any complaints there. Todd Gurley has fallen off. Le'Veon Bell has fallen off. Elliott's fallen off. I mean, who else could you put there theoretically?
I would say no one.
I think it's only Aaron Jones that you could even make an argument for.
Exactly, yeah.
And he says Joe Mixon was a close call. I don't even think Joe Mixon is close. I mean, that's one guy. If you want to talk fantasy, that's one guy I avoid every single year. He's never healthy. It's always, he's going to be such a great pass catching back. He still hasn't done that. I mean, he had Burrow last year, and I wasn't super impressed with his statistical output. So I don't know. I think Aaron Jones, you could argue, but I do think he got the running backs right, and kicking Zeke out makes a lot of sense. Now, moving on to the wide receivers here. He has A.J. Brown in, Odell Beckham out. It sucks because it's like, I love Odell, but he's been hurt so much. You still saw that superstar ability when he was healthy last year, especially against the Cowboys. That game he blew up. A.J. Brown has just turned himself into yards after a catch monster. I mean, he is somebody that's been huge for Tannehill. Now you have Julio Jones, so you have to imagine maybe he could even get to another level, with Julio Jones taking some of the, because that was with A.J. Brown being the go-to guy. So we will see in that regard. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on A.J. Brown and Odell? Because I know you've been a little lower on Odell than me. I still think Odell is a superstar by name. I don't know by, and I don't want to say he's not talented, but I need to see how he comes back from this brutal injury. I mean, he's had ACL, he's had ankle. I need to see him come back and be able to play. And I think he can, but I'm not going to put him in that tier until I see it.
Yeah, I mean, no, Odell is an afterthought to me right now. What has he done?
And that's the thing.
Jarvis Landry is the best receiver they have right now on the Browns, in my opinion. I mean, their offense doesn't even really utilize him.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is that when he got hurt, it seemed like the offense gained more of.
They were better.
They gained more clarity, and I don't think it has to do with Odell. I think it has to do with them trying to force Baker into just throwing. When you saw they were just running with the two guys, Hunt and the guy we just talked about, Chubb, when they let those guys roll, it's like, okay, now things are easy for Baker. Now you're making 17 throws a game if that run game works the way it can work, and it's shown it can work. And so, I mean, I don't have to tell you the playoff game between the Steelers and Browns. I mean, he didn't really make any incredible throws or anything like that. They were served out to him.
So frustrating.
Yeah.
You couldn't touch. They couldn't touch him. They couldn't get pressure on him because of the line is so amazing, and the run game just tired them out. And then he wasn't forced to make any incredible throw. So Minka really couldn't make any plays at the free safety position. It was just, there was no opportunity there to really flip the script on the game at all. And that's a product of how great their running backs are and how great their offensive line is. They make it super easy for Baker Mayfield. But other people will tell you Baker Mayfield's a top 5 quarterback now and whatever.
Not us. I don't hate Baker, as you know. I did like him in the draft, but I've soured on him quite a bit. Okay, let's catch up here. Really good prospect coming out. I'm assuming he's talking about Chubb. Running game really makes quarterbacks better. Nick, special. Zeke looking jacked. What do you think about what's his guy Hunt? Better pass catcher. Can't pay them both. If Baker can't win this year, I think you have to focus on Chubb. It'd be great to keep them both, but Chubb is the younger one. Chubb is the the more effective one. I love Kareem Hunt, but I definitely roll with Chubb. And then Holden, what's up? Tannehill's offensive line and Derrick Henry had tremendously helped him. It's a great situation. Granted, Mariota wasn't doing the things Tannehill is doing. That's a great comment there. Then Champ from LA. Elliott got the tires ran off. Loves the women, loves the drink, loves the life. I think that's there's some truth there. Holden, I have Henry, CMC, and then Saquon. Champ from LA, I like Aaron Jones. I think he topped out in the NFC Championship game. Yep, I like Saquon. I picked Mixon for fantasy. Man, you're right. Holden says AJ Brown greater than Metcalf. Champ from LA, AJ was better than DK in college. DK is a bigger game changer in the pros. They double him. I think AJ has better hands, but that's marginal.
I think they're different.
Kyler. Oh, I don't think Baker's better than Kyler, but that's an interesting debate.
If you put Kyler on the Browns, I would be more scared of them.
Yeah, I definitely think Kyler's better, but that's interesting. Yeah. Baker lives by his name and cooks turnovers, says 8-2 cool. So I mean, I think we're in agreement there. Obviously I'm a huge Odell fan, but I need to see this season. AJ Brown is firmly in the elite status for me. He's a great receiver. Then this is one that I find like bizarre. So this one makes sense. I think, Stephon Diggs being in, fine. Like, I thought he was great this year. He's had a very consistent career. I always felt like he was the lesser of the two between him and Thielen, because I think Thielen is a better route runner, but Diggs got better. Like, he found something that he didn't have in Minnesota. And, I think Diggs has an argument to be in there. So I don't hate that. But
he was a monster last year. My God.
The
that Steelers game?
Oh, yeah. He was a freak last year, if you really think about it.
Honestly, he might have been. I mean, who was a better receiver last year? People would say Devontae Adams.
Yeah. I mean, if you're
But
looking in terms of statistical output, he was like top 5, top
yeah,
3 maybe.
I didn't watch Devontae as close because he's in the NFC, but man, Diggs was just tearing it up, just getting open, just running great routes. I mean, he was awesome last year.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked though by this next one. Mike Evans out?
Why?
I
Just because
don't
they spread the ball around more?
I don't this was a tough one, but the zero sum conceit of this silly little project demanded I make room, so Evans gets the boot. Tough luck for a receiver who crossed 1,000 yards receiving in each of his first 7 seasons. Bro, you just basically gave me a reason why he shouldn't be out.
Yeah, he should be in.
He's
Mike
absolutely
Evans
in.
is a beast. I mean, come on.
I mean, he gets hurt, but he still goes over 1,000 yards every single year.
Yeah.
7
Who,
years in a row.
who do you make room for?
He made room for Diggs, and then the next one, I didn't even know who he was in. DK Metcalf in, Amari Cooper out. I don't think I ever would have put Amari Cooper in.
I would not have put Cooper in. I honestly
Metcalf
would
is
have.
elite. I think Metcalf's elite. But I think Evans is elite.
Is he
And if
better
you
than Mike
look,
Evans? I
but
don't think
no,
he's better than
because
Mike Evans.
Evans has done it longer, and you could argue Evans won a Super Bowl. Evans helped his team, and I'm a big fan of DK. I'm not trying to hate on
I
the
know you
guy,
are. Yeah.
but if you remember, you go back to the Rams and Seahawks game, he started complaining on the sidelines about not getting the ball.
Yep.
Then they threw it. They purposely were like, all right, we'll just give you the ball. We're going to give it to you on like a quick bubble screen. And Darius
Yeah.
Williams of the Rams had telegraphed
Fumble
perfectly. It was
or
a
picked it.
touchdown, pick
Right. He
6.
picked 6. Yeah.
So, I mean,
I would not put him. I would take Mike Evans right now.
whereas
DK
Mike
could
Evans,
develop into a better player just because of the traits, but
yeah,
Mike
absolutely.
Evans right now, if you said for this coming year, you can have Mike Evans or DK Metcalf, I would go Mike Evans.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, it's hard for me because I love Metcalf, but I just, I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. I'm more scared of Metcalf, I would say, in just a one-on-one scenario where, the last play of the game, no matter who's throwing the ball, it's Metcalf or Evans. I think in a play-by-play scenario, DK is more scary. But I think Evans is more consistent over the course of a season, and that's where the elite traits come in. That's where I decide who's better. And I'll take a guy that can give me 1,000 yards in 7 straight years over a guy that will go off in one game and disappear in another. This guy hasn't shown that he can do that. So that's what I would say about that. Champ from LA, that Browns versus Ravens game sold me on Baker. Champ from LA, Diggs found a cannon arm. Thielen is the real deal too, holding Cantor. Devontae Adams for sure. Champ from LA, Devontae was a problem for sure. Reminded me of Julio last year, unstoppable. I'm more scared of DK than Mike Evans. DK just doesn't run routes as good yet. See, that's pretty much where I'm at. Evans, I think, is more of the long-term complete receiver, consistent. Whereas DK, if he gets there, he's going to be a lot better, but he's not there yet.
Right. Which is why, especially on the Steelers, I would take Mike Evans for this year. Because you already have a guy, obviously
Absolutely.
Chase isn't as good as DK yet, or I don't know if he ever will be, but like similar mold is what I'm trying to say. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, similar strengths. You already have that kind of guy. So,
well, and that was the thought process of why you would even consider going after Julio. That's why like Steelers fans are trying to say, well, we have great receivers, but they're more great prospects to become great receivers,
right.
and less about what they can be right now. When you have a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, you're trying to win now before he retires. Does make sense to go after a guy like that. So I agree with you. Amari Cooper, to me, has been, he is a little bit overlooked, I would say. I mean, he was on a crazy pace, 1,300 yards, 125 catches, and then he suffers an ankle injury in week 5, and still had 1,100 yards on the season. So he's actually pretty good. To me, I don't look at him in that same boat. I think there are a lot of, receivers that are really, really good. I look at him in the same lines as like a Cooper Kupp, a Robert Woods, a Tyler Boyd, even Juju Smith-Schuster, but they never feel like they're truly upper echelon or going to be upper echelon for me. I feel like they're in that tier. They work well after the catch. They're good route runners, that whole thing. So I don't know why Cooper was in his elite before and now he's not. The updated wide receiver membership he has here: Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, DK Metcalf, and Michael Thomas. Aside from what we talked about, is there anybody there that doesn't fit? Because to me, I think I don't have an issue with any of them. I think Thielen has an argument. I think he says Justin Jefferson was a close call, but that's a 1 year thing. I need to see more. Calvin Ridley, but again, he really had just gigantic year. You have to hope that he continues that, but I don't know. Allen Robinson, he also had as a close call. That guy has more contested catches than anybody in the league. I think Allen Robinson has a legit argument to be in that exclusive superstar wide receiver club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, those names make sense. There's not anyone that sticks out to me that I'm like, oh my God, why is he there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was expecting like Cole Beasley or something. Like, oh my God. And then, so he only did offense and only did the skill position players. So we can talk a little bit about like anything, like anything that sticks out on the defense or anything like that. But tight end, he's got Darren Waller in and Rob Gronkowski out. I agree with this because Gronkowski is still a solid producing tight end, but he is all about his name now. He's got Tom Brady as his quarterback. He's not elite anymore. He's a superstar by name. And maybe he's not even a superstar by name, but more of a superstar by association to Tom Brady. And I would say Darren Waller he's just a freak. There's a question is he the best tight end? Is he the second or is he the third? Because I think Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller all have arguments as first, second, and third. I just think no matter what order you put them in, I can understand it.
I would take Kittle first.
I would too.
So just going based off what I would take Kittle, Kelsey, then Darren. I guess I would put him 1, 2, 3 in that order.
That's how I have that.
Not overthinking it.
Yeah, he's only got 3 tight ends, which is how I feel it is. He's got Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller. Close call. He mentions Kyle Pitts potentially down the road, which I understand that. I would say TJ Hawkinson is a guy to look out for over time. I would say Noah Fant is a guy to look at over time. And I'm curious about Jacob Harris of the Rams over time, the way he, his athleticism and the way he really compares athletically to Calvin Johnson, looking at him, with Sean McVay as the offensive mind there. And then, of course, you have Matthew Stafford, all those weapons. The Rams want to keep him somewhat smaller. So instead of comparing him to a Calvin Johnson or any of the elite tight ends that are, they do both like Kelsey and Kittle, I think they're trying to make him their own Darren Waller, a guy that was a former wide receiver turned tight end. Not going to be surprised if they keep him at that weight. They use Bryson Hopkins to kind of develop him on both sides, but they use him as like a mismatch, keeping him a little bit lighter and a little bit faster. So those are my guys. I definitely think Kyle Pitts is warranted in the future, but right now those are my 3. And then kind of catching up here, Amari Cooper, he taps out too. Meh for me, talented but mentally meh. There was to be 40 good wide receivers this year. Yeah, I mean the receivers are crazy. Ridley and Jefferson are on the come up. Allen Robinson with the quarterback play has got to be top 10. Agree. Chase Claypool is a beast. I saw him at Notre Dame. Went to him all day in the red zone versus USC. Mark Andrews, that's an interesting one. Gesicki, dude from Miami. I think they have.
I just think they're a tier below. Yeah, they're a tier below for me.
I think, yeah, we'll see with Mark Andrews if he develops into that. I mean, I think he's kind of what he's going to be. If he gets
Yeah,
a
I
little
think
bit better, I won't be surprised.
he's
Um,
amazing though. I mean, what he is,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
awesome.
well, Gesicki's interesting. That athleticism growing with Tua. What we
We'll
started to
see.
see
Yeah,
last year with quarterback play that wasn't as consistent as you'd like. And then Fryermuth, if he ends up developing,
yeah.
I mean, Heath Miller
I mean,
was
he's
pretty damn good, but I think he could be a lot better if he develops the way I think he could.
Frymouth will be interesting. I want to see if he proves me wrong with the separation issue
Yeah.
and the route running ability. He just lumbers a lot, even for a tight end. I know tight ends lumber because they're monsters, but like he lumbers. But hopefully he proves me wrong. I'm excited for him though because I do think he will be the number one tight end probably by next year,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And he's not going to be bad. Like his floor is good, right? It's like
Yeah.
you got a good tight end for
Exactly.
10 years, just stay healthy, essentially. It's more about like what's that ceiling going to look like? And it could turn into a great ceiling, like a top 5 tight end. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I'm a fan. It's just like the question is how big does he get? How talented does he really turn into as a tight end?
No, I agree with that. I think, it's another one that's really interesting to look at the New England Patriots because they grabbed two really good tight ends in free agency and Jonnu Smith and, Hunter Henry. Um, what I'm curious is if one of them emerges and like finds like a super stardom ability that we've never seen before. Because I think Jonnu Smith being like, don't get me wrong, like I think Tennessee is great. But Tennessee is great for a receiver. Tennessee is great for Tannehill. Tennessee is great for Derrick Henry. Tennessee's not great for tight ends. And Jonnu to me, he was in kind of a weird rotation where you had Delaney Walker and then you had
Mm-hmm.
the guy that they're really high on, Anthony Firkser. So maybe put him in there. I don't know where he'll go as a long-term, name to watch. But I mean, that's an interesting one. Gerald Everett in Seattle generated more separation yards than any tight end in the NFL last year. Really, the issue was Jared Goff didn't get him the ball consistently. And the fact, you had Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, all those guys around him, wasn't even the starter because you had Higbee. Higbee's another name. If Matt Stafford all of a sudden wants to go to Higbee and he gets a ton of targets, that guy could erupt. And then I think the last name I would bring up as far as tight ends are concerned is Hayden Hurst because I think he has obviously he's a pretty solid tight end. Now with the Falcons, I think if they trade him at the deadline, he could go to a contender like say maybe even goes to like Green Bay or like Arizona, who's rocking with Max, whatever his name is, I forget his name, Max Williams. That's the starting tight end in Arizona. So I could see Hayden Hurst being traded. Another guy I'll throw out there, Irv Smith Jr. For the Minnesota Vikings, second round pick at Alabama. I'm curious to see him develop, but those are just a bunch of names that I threw out there. I think really the tight end position is always the same. You have your Antonio Gates, your Tony Gonzalez, your Jason Wittens every year, and then everyone else. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what the tight end position has always been is that you see flashes of brilliance, but all in all, you're going to have your elite guys, and there's going to be a small amount of them because it's just how many receivers you have and running backs and so forth. So, let's talk about the defense a little bit, and because he didn't add them in his article, and just off the top of my head, I can tell you right now, and the defensive line, when I think of upper echelon, I mean personally, you're putting Aaron Donald in another tier, but he's going to be in that superstar group. Like you're not going to make another group and just have one player. So if you do a superstar group, I think it's Donald. I think it's Chris Jones from Kansas City. I think it is DeForest Buckner from Indy. I think it's Cam Hayward from Pittsburgh. I don't think people are realizing the job Hayward has done, not only throughout his career, I think he's getting better each year. I know he's getting older, but I was really impressed with this past season from Hayward. Grady Jarrett of the Falcons, Quinnen Williams from the Jets.
There's a lot of great defensive linemen,
Yeah,
honestly.
Leonard
It's pretty.
Williams from the Giants. Puna Ford is my sleeper here from Seattle. I don't think enough people talk about him because he's a UDFA from Texas. He's like 5'11". The guy just moves so well. And then another guy, Fletcher Cox, and I'll just wrap it up by Kenny Clark from Green Bay. But those are like names that come to mind. I know Tuitt. He's been up there for me.
He gets left out.
Yeah.
Every time, even I leave him out because I have Cam Hayward and I worry about him getting his recognition first because he definitely deserves it and gets left out. But Tuitt gets left out even from me. But I see stuff all the time on Twitter, these advanced analytics where Tuitt is consistently in the top 5 of like interior defensive linemen or just defensive linemen in general in pass rushing, in run support, in, whatever it is, whatever the stat is. And I'm always like, dang, yeah, like he's really good and people sleep on him, but I can't fight 2 battles on the D line, at once. So I kind of just focus on Cam Hayward because he definitely gets left out of the conversation. But yeah, Tuitt is right in there for me. I think he deserves to be at least talked about on that cusp for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a honorable mention, as well as the former Steeler that's with the Eagles now, Javon Hargrave.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think he had a pretty good year last year. I'm going to just go through the comments real quick, and then we'll go into the edge defenders.
Okay.
So let's see here. I see a breakout year from Evan Ingram. I didn't even think about Evan Ingram. I know some Giants fans are like, they're done with him because of the drops, but I mean, if he can get it together, we already know the talent. You were super high on him coming out, and rightfully so. They also had Kyle Rudolph. That's going to be an interesting one. Then you have Daniel Jones is the real deal. Interesting from Champ from LA. Pats at 2 tight ends, Jonnu and Hunter. That's a great combo. We're going to miss GE if Hopkins doesn't step up. Higbee just needs looks/targets as far as receiving. I like both of Denver's tight ends, Fant and the dude out of Mizzou. Hard to pronounce his name. Oh, Alberto. And then Cam Hayward is just a large man. That dude at Indy from San Francisco, and San Francisco still has a good-looking defensive tackle. Tuitt out of Notre Dame, bunch of good DLs too. Now edge. And I think I'm actually on your side on this, in all likelihood anyway. Because the way I see it is that, I don't think like TJ Watt wouldn't have won Defensive Player of the Year for me. That doesn't mean I don't think TJ Watt isn't the best edge defender in football right now. And so I feel like it's funny how the people that were pushing for TJ Watt to win Defensive Player of the Year now in their rankings have TJ Watt below Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Von Miller. And I don't really get it because all the guy does is produce. So let's talk about it. We can talk about the top real quick, and then we can just talk about guys that would be in that club. But wouldn't you make that argument as well that like TJ Watt and Aaron Donald were the best defensive players last year? Whoever you voted for, they were the best. I would have voted for Donald, but I feel like at edge, I don't think there was anybody on TJ Watt's level. So by virtue, wouldn't you put him number 1?
Yeah. I think the thing that hampers TJ Watt the most, and it's going to sound so dumb, but I really believe it, is his look.
Yeah.
Look at him. He doesn't look like an outside linebacker or an edge.
Bro, we loved him in the draft.
Yeah, but like you look at his body, he doesn't look like one.
It's true.
Got slender legs. He's not like super built. He definitely doesn't look like a Myles Garrett.
No.
Definitely doesn't look even like a Joey Bosa who's just thick through and through, right? He just doesn't look like any really edge rusher I've seen that has performed at his levels. And I think people take that into account and they kind of knock him for it, which I think is so dumb because I have, he's the most consistent edge rusher for the last 2 to 3 years. He had the best edge rushing numbers this past season, which is why people were debating, for DPOY. He, to me, wins in critical situations more than any other edge rusher. When you need a stop, you need a sack, you need a forced fumble, he's there. He's going to be the one who does it. You can count on him. He's got great run defense ability, integrity. He knows where to keep his rush lanes at. He knows not to get out of position. He knows when he can do a speed rush and risk getting pushed up the arc, and when he should just kind of bull rush it or keep it inside because it could potentially be this type of play or a run play. He's just so good at not blowing assignments while also making huge splash plays. Like he's unreal, and I think he's number one without a question. I don't care how fast and big and talented Myles Garrett is. I really don't, because that's the person that people put ahead of him, but I don't care.
Man, it's funny because it kind of goes against what we were saying. I have him at 5 on my list. Myles Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
I have Watt number 1. I have Mac 2 because of Mac's ability against the run. Yep. And just, I guess the biggest issue with Mac, I think what hinders him from getting so many sacks, everybody knows this. Lane Johnson said it on that offensive line, offensive line U or whatever. He was saying how everyone knows Khalil Mack. It's not like, shocking information that Khalil Mack wants to win inside. And so he tries everything he can to get to the inside and win inside. And so I think that kind of gives him up because everybody knows what his tendencies are, but he's still number 2 for me. Joey Bosa, I think, is better than Nick Bosa. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think he's a guy that is always considered, he's a plug and play guy coming out of college. He doesn't have a high ceiling. For whatever reason, he got that early on. I think I was honestly guilty of that early on, giving that to him. But when you look at Bosa, man, he is just, he's ruthless. And I really think, as long as he can stay healthy, there's no reason he can't stay in that conversation. So to me, he's absolutely in that club. And, then I have, looking at that, I have Chase Young. I know that's crazy, right? Chase Young's a rookie. But when you look at what Chase Young meant to that team, I think Chase Young put them over the edge. Because I think they already had Montez Sweat. They already had, Jonathan Adams. They already had those guys, Daron Payne, all of them. When they got Chase Young, notice that defense just took a different level. They took it up a notch, and they didn't have great linebacker play. They just added, the kid from Kentucky and Jamin Davis, and it's like they didn't even have great linebacker play, but Chase Young did so much against the run and as a pass rusher. I have him at 4, and then at 5, I have Myles Garrett. At 6, I have Brian Burns. I think people need to start talking about him. He really blew up last year in Carolina. The only problem was we were expecting Carolina to play some meaningful football. They looked good at the start. They were competitive, and Teddy Bridgewater was doing, a good job. He gets hurt. They really kind of started to falter down the end of the, down the stretch. And so I think that really hurt him. I think that hurt guys like him. As far as getting the recognition. Nick Bosa with the injuries, DeMarcus Lawrence in Dallas, Cameron Jordan is a guy, no matter how much you like him or hate him, he's not going anywhere. He continues to churn out really productive seasons for the New Orleans Saints, as well as, Shaq Barrett, who may not have had the best year last year, but he really has been huge over the last 3 years. And when he came to Tampa on a $5 million 1-year prove it deal, he had 19 sacks that season. So, he's clearly in there. Donnell Hunter from the Vikings is just a freak of nature. Von Miller, can't forget about him. He's fallen down my list because, he hasn't had the consistency. He's been hurt, all of that. And then JJ Watt. But those are my guys. Did I miss anyone in that group?
There was a lot of names there, so it's hard to say.
You could argue Bud Dupree, I think. But how much was that Bud Dupree, and how much of that, now that we know, was that TJ Watt?
Yeah, I think Bud Dupree is probably just off that list. But if you're putting JJ Watt in there still, then I would argue maybe Bud Dupree should be on that list as well. because J.J. Watt right now is not, to me, he's not that great. He's good. He's solid. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you missed any. There's no name that's like, oh my God, how did you forget this guy? I think, but there's also a lot of edge rushers. So
yeah, I know it's
potentially,
crazy. I would say Zadarius Smith, his ability in not only just because they have Preston and Zadarius, and I also think you gotta look out for Rashawn Gary. I think he really came on strong towards the end of the season. He's going to be a big time name next year, but no, I think you definitely could say Zadarius Smith. The Packers get him in free agency from Baltimore, and that dude just really just elevated his play when it came to the postseason, and that's what I remember.
dude. Did you know Hassan Reddick had 12 and a half sacks last year?
I mean, well, yeah, Hassan Reddick is another guy.
What the heck? I didn't even know that.
I guess the weird thing and why I
six forced
forgot
fumbles.
him. Yeah. Well,
my goodness.
It's tough with Hassan because it's like, what is he? He
I loved
plays.
him coming out.
I know he plays inside. He plays outside. I think he's going to play outside. He's actually with Carolina now, so it's going to be him and Brian Burns off the edge.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah. So
I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah, it took him a while, but
Also, Jamal Adams, just a shout out because I'm looking at these stats: 9.5 sacks.
Yeah. Yeah, we should have put Jamal Adams on the edge rusher list.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through these comments real quick. Then we'll go to the linebackers, corners, and safeties, and wrap up the show. Let's see what we got here. Okay. TJ is a stud, says shot by Nolan. Nick was giving Witt hell as a rookie. That Washington defense just wow. Chase did something that made Sweat play better. Allen and Payne have always played well. You like that Carolina defense? They draft well. I like Burns and that safety, small school guy. Oh yeah, Chin. I love Jeremy Chin. I know you liked him as well coming out.
Yeah.
D-Law is not elite. I don't know, man. I've been very with DeMarcus Lawrence. I always thought it was because he's on Dallas and he resembles a above average pass rusher and he's on America's team. But I actually, going back to the tape, DeMarcus Lawrence does a little bit of everything super well. So he's legit. He really is. Yeah, that Washington football squad defense forming nicely. Shaq Barrett is a problem too. Zadarius Smith is pretty good. Gary, Rashawn, problems. Michigan has some good players. Hassan took 4 years to pop. I thought we should have traded for him. He plays everywhere. So let's get into linebackers. At the top, I mean, the first name I always thought of each year was, at least for me, Bobby Wagner. I always thought, elite linebackers, I always thought Bobby Wagner. And now I dock him 2 spots. I have Fred Warner at number 1, and I have Eric Kendricks at number 2. Levante David, Darius Leonard, Deion Jones, Devin Bush, Devin White, Blake Martinez are all guys up there for me. But who would you say is in that superstar club for the linebackers?
I don't even know, dude. That's a tough question. Like, let me pull up the list here real quick.
Because, I mean, I think, what's weird? Demario Davis's ascension as a linebacker, he originally was with the Jets.
Obviously, I got Fred Warner, one of my top guys. Darius Leonard, I love. Got to put him in there. Who else? Silently, Zach Cunningham had a great year.
Yeah, Cunningham's good, man.
164 total tackles. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I like Jalen Smith a lot. Devin White, I would put in there right now after the season he just had. Bobby Wagner, I would still say, put him in there. And then Raquan Smith. I like him. He's over there in Chicago doing his thing. He's been great. Yeah, I would put those guys. I don't think there's not too many like standout inside linebackers, really, in my opinion. Like Tremaine Edmonds isn't where I would want him to be yet.
No, he's absolutely not. I expect him to be way ahead of where he is right now. I mean, I think a guy by the name of Matt Milano, who also played for that team, re-signed. I think he's not an elite guy, but he's a name to mention. I think Jason Verrett is a really good linebacker. I think he's a Alexander Johnson is doing work in Denver. That's a guy that needs to be mentioned. He is very good. I would say the guy that plays next to Devin Bush doesn't get enough credit either. I'm not
Which
saying he's
one? Vince Williams?
Vince Williams. I don't think he's
Yeah.
a superstar, but I think he's
No,
underrated. And I thought Spillane played well last year too.
he did.
Um,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
well, and you know, I'd also say Alukun, the linebacker for the Falcons from Yale. He's great, man. Him and Deion Jones. It's a nice tandem. The Falcons, they have they still have some really good talent, and that's somebody. And then Blake Martinez for the Giants, tackling machine. Really, I think found his stride. He was always pretty good, on the Packers, but he really found another level. And then I'd say Joe Schobert is another guy to keep in mind as well as Jayon Brown with the Titans. Corey Littleton a few years ago, actually even last year, not 2020, but 2019. Corey Littleton was in that conversation, had a rough year with the Raiders, but he's going to move to outside linebacker. They run a 4-3. So it'll be interesting to see him. But yeah, I mean, I think we can agree there. Fred Warner, I think, is the best linebacker. Eric Kendricks is just not talked about enough. He does so much, in coverage, and you got to give him his due as well. And then let's see here. We got some comments. Inside linebacker is tough. What happens to guys that Houston drafted at linebacker? What happened to the guys that Houston?
Zach Cunningham, you mean?
Well, Cunningham's still there, right?
Yeah.
McKinney went to the Dolphins, I believe. Yeah. So McKinney is awesome. I forgot to mention him, Bernardrick McKinney. True Edmonds didn't he enter the league at age 20? He did. So he's still got
young,
plenty of time. Yeah. Blake Martinez plays the game the right way and they won't pay him. Yeah, that's kind of the sad true nature of playing linebacker in the NFL. But now we move on to corner, and I don't know about you, and I mean, it sounds biased, but I've always felt this way. Jalen Ramsey is the best corner in football. I just don't think anybody plays the position the way he does. And
it's him and Jair, right?
Well, I'd say it's a 3-man race, and it doesn't include Xavier Howard like people would think. It'd be Marlon Humphrey for me. I think Humphrey does more. I think Humphrey is phenomenal. He had 8 forced fumbles last year. He's one of the best cover corners in the league. He's physical. He's got the size, the speed, the athleticism. Can do a little bit of everything and can rush the passer as well when need be. So I think those 3, Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey. Jalen does it all. Marlon is the best. I mean, he's the best as far as generating turnovers at the cornerback position. It's not even interceptions. He will literally tear the football out. Jair Alexander, I think, he's so great at mirroring. That's his thing. He does just phenomenal job. Has great footwork. And then Xavier Howard is like the ball hawk guy, I would say.
I like him a lot. I want the Steelers to try and get him away from Miami.
Howard?
Yeah, but I would put Jalen at the top. I would then put Jair, and then I would put Marlon Humphrey. I do think he's that good, but like I would put if it was like Jalen up here, Jair like here, and then like Humphrey like down here.
Oh, really?
If that was my top 3. Yeah.
So you look at those two as like they're
a few degrees.
Notch.
Yeah, I think there's a few degrees of separation with Marlon. Just from like a zone coverage aspect, you can do some things to him. You can win against him in zone specifically. But I mean, he's amazing, right? That's not really a knock on him. It's just a product of how far ahead I think Jair and Jalen are of everyone else.
Yeah.
But I would still say those are top 3, and then it's like everyone else after them,
Yeah, I mean, I think next up, I think you have guys like, James Bradbury was phenomenal last year for the Giants.
Hmm.
And he was always really good for Carolina. I'm a big fan of his. Darius Williams also at the Rams, love him. He's the ball hawk there. He's 5'9", but man, he plays way above the rim. He will
Hmm.
go up there and he will swat that pass down, or he'll go up there and pick it off. Really good in coverage, solid tackler. We haven't really seen him blitz much, so there's not really much there, and that's not a huge deal. Then you have Trey White, in my opinion, from the Bills. A guy that I think Tre'Davious White was probably ranked a little too high early on in his career, and so for some
He was
people,
great that one year and it like really propelled him
yeah, and
on
like
people's radars. But I mean,
we,
he's still good. No,
oh,
like
absolutely.
obviously, but
Well, we liked him, but like, don't you remember he got propelled so high to the point where it like wasn't, I don't think he ever got better, but I don't think he got worse. And like people were they were so high on him from the top. Like he was here, and because he didn't ever match that play, or he didn't go above that play, people just like don't look at him in the same tier as some other guys. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair. Then you have Stephon Gilmore, former defensive player of the year. I think he's got a little overrated as like lately. I don't necessarily think he's a guy that you could just go out and get and just
I was
make your
never
entire secondary better. He was
I was
horrible
never
with the
that high
Bills.
on him. Dude, I was never that high on him. Even in his great like 2 year stretch,
Well, and
I
that's the
really
thing.
wasn't.
He's had like a 2-3 year stretch with the Patriots. J.C.
And
Jackson's an interesting name. He's
yeah,
played well. William Jackson the third now with Washington. I mean, I really
yeah,
think
he
William
had his
Jackson has a shot to be really good. Bryce Callahan in Denver doesn't really look the part, but just is. I think he's the best nickel in football. And then Denzel Ward with the Browns is a name I'm watching.
he's another one too who had a great like rookie promising year and kind of fell off or didn't rise to the heights I expected him to after watching him his rookie year. Would you agree with that?
I would. I would.
Yeah.
And, he's similar to like Desmond Trufant, if you remember him.
Hmm.
Like Trufant
Yep.
coming out, everyone's like, "Oh my God, Trufant's going to be a superstar," and then he fell off a cliff, and now he just
Yeah.
signed for like the veteran minimum or something like that with the Lions. Now, as far as superstar, we're with Ramsey on that. So Ramsey, Alexander, Humphrey, Howard. I'd put Bradbury in there. Would you put Bradbury in there?
I can't say I'm going to plead the fifth because I haven't watched him enough to make a decision either way, to be honest.
Because I love Darius Williams as much as the next guy. I need to see one more season of him.
Hmm.
I couldn't put him in the superstar category yet, but he's top 10, in my opinion, no doubt.
Okay. I'll
So
take your
I would
word
say
for
that.
it. Yeah.
Now, you being a Steelers fan, would you make any arguments for anybody on the Steelers right now?
Nah. Love Joe Hayden. You know what you're going to get from Joe Hayden. Uh, so he can lock it down in that aspect of his game, but he's not in a looking at top 10 guys. There's 10 guys I would probably put ahead of him right now. Um, so no, I wouldn't say anyone's like elite on the Steelers for cornerbacks. Who knows? Maybe James Pierre will step up. He was great last year for what he did, the little he showed. Maybe he can become a lockdown guy from Florida Atlantic.
That's
Did
a
you
name.
did you do any tape on him? Any tape
No.
research coming out? I know you usually know those kind of smaller named guys, but yeah, James Pierre, Florida Atlantic. He filled in for some injuries last year, and he was really, really, really good. Like he jumped Justin Lane on the depth chart.
That
Did
was
some
my guy.
great things. Yeah, he locked guys down last year, so we'll see what happens this year.
That's interesting. I haven't heard his name, so I'll definitely keep him in
Yeah.
mind. Now safety,
Yep.
Steelers
This
definitely
is a
on that.
debate. This is
So,
a debate, man. Even for me, I don't know. I mean, you give me your insight on safety. What do you have the list as?
well, right now I have a top 5 in order of Jesse Bates the third, Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, John Johnson the third, and Justin Simmons. Keep in mind that leaves out Jamal Adams, Buda Baker, Adrian Amos,
Yeah.
Tyrann
Jamal.
Mathieu, you know. But
Why are you leaving Jamal out?
because I don't think Jamal was that great last year. And I know he was an all-pro.
He had 9 sacks.
Yeah, but that's the
That
thing.
means you
He
got to
was
be doing good.
well, I mean, he was used in that way, but it was like as far as like we're talking, when we love him, like when we're talking about how much we loved him because of his range. We loved him because he was a ball hawk, but he could also lay the wood in the middle of the field, make sure like you're not going to throw over the middle. That seam buster is eliminated, but I didn't see that. They didn't use him in that way. Internal temp high, allow it to cool. Damn.
Oh, is that my computer? Hold
Yeah.
on. I'll switch the camera.
It's like I was like, man, who am I talking to? All right.
All right.
So yeah, so I guess my thought process is that Adams fell off as far as a safety, as a gadget guy, a Swiss Army knife, sure, but Buda Baker, there's definitely an argument for him. I'd say Jesse Bates was the best safety last year, and he's been consistently really good. I don't think he has quite the best corners around him. So I think, obviously he had Will Jackson last year, but doesn't have him anymore. Just really impressed with the way he's played, not only as a ball hawk, but a guy that can really come up, stick his face in the fan, make the first tackle, make the first contact, sure tackler, not a guy that, is going to, miss a tackle here and there. And he's basically been the leader of their defense. Minkah, I don't think has as great cornerback play as, say, a guy like John Johnson. And I thought Minkah Fitzpatrick was like, he took over. So when Devin Bush got hurt, like there needed to be a true leader. And I feel like Minkah kind of took over as like the leader in the back half of like when you take the linebackers in the secondary, like he led that whole quadrant of the defense. Obviously, you have Hayward.
Him and Joe.
Yeah.
I would say him and Joe Hayden kind of lead the back.
And Minkah is another one of those guys, but I think he's very similar to Jamal Adams in the fact he can do everything. And I think the fact of the matter is he did everything last year and then some. So Minkah's 2 for me. 3 is Derwin James because I know he's been hurt, but I mean, this guy's still, when you talk about, as soon as you mention Derwin James, you think a superstar. Like, he's just phenomenal. And so now you think, with Brandon Staley, you have to imagine he's going to be in a huge role, similar to Jalen Ramsey, kind of doing a little bit of everything. So I'm really curious to see him. John Johnson goes to Cleveland. Now, he was phenomenal for the Rams. I did not expect him to take that next step the way he did. So I would put him in the top 5. And then Justin Simmons, just a great safety. And by the way, Justin Simmons and John Johnson both went to Boston College. They really churned out some really good defensive backs there. So that's not a shock to me. But yeah, Buda Baker is my honorable mention right outside. And Adrian Amos, I think, deserves some mention here because he does a lot that really goes unnoticed for the Packers because he's not, the flashy guy, but will come up and make, a important hit. He's not a hard-hitting Brian Dawkins type of guy, but he can come up and make a really important hit. And I think that's something with him. And then I'd say, Marcus May for the Jets, Harrison Smith for the Vikings, and lastly, Marcus Williams, the guy that everyone knows for completely botching the tackle in the playoff game that ruined the Saints. But he has really, ever since then, just bounced back in the best way possible. He's turned into one of the better safeties in football. Super versatile. Can do a little bit of everything. I'd also throw out, Tracy Walker with the Lions, can do a little bit of everything. But those are some names. The top 5, though, with Buda Baker, Jamal Adams, and maybe Amos, I would say are in my like superstar club, so to speak.
Okay. So wait, you don't have Minkah in the superstar club?
No, Minkah's number 2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have him second overall in safeties.
Got you. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's hard to. I don't think I have Jesse Bates that high. I think he had a really impressive, consistently good career so far, but I see him twice a year. He doesn't really impact Steelers games, at least. as much as you might be led to believe. He's definitely one of the better players on that defense, so he will make plays. Um, I think he's a little bit limited too in what they can ask him to do. I don't see him as like this amazing kind of move them all around coverage guy. I think he's really primarily just like a good free safety that you can stick back there, and he's really smart and good in zone, and he will make plays from there. But as far as like bringing him down into the box and like lining him up man to man with people, I don't really notice him doing that at a high level too much. So, I mean, I don't want to sound biased, but I would put Minka above him. I don't know that I would put Minka at number one, because I know a lot of people like to put Justin Simmons at number one, and I know PFF really loves Justin Simmons. I haven't watched him enough personally. Maybe you can give some insight into if he's really that great or not.
He's great. I wouldn't put him at one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really like Minka, Derwin, and Jamal Adams as like my top three favorite safeties right now. And then make your argument for one. I would say after last year, it's definitely Minka at one for me. And then, Jamal and Derwin after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because Quandre Diggs was like also an all-pro safety. We didn't even mention him. I don't look at Quandre Diggs as like, I mean, he had a good year. I also think the Seattle Seahawks get a little bit overrated by the writers. I would definitely say that. I mean, just looking at it, I mean, I think Buda Baker is a guy that you loved coming out, and I wasn't as high on. And I think he's really just because he was everything early on in his career. He was everything I didn't want. Right? I just thought he was like a nickel, like really like a stocky, like a, just like one of those guys, like a LaMarcus Joyner. I think that's actually what I said to you. I think the reason I didn't like him so much is I just kind of couldn't, take my eyes away from the fact that I thought he was just like another LaMarcus Joyner type of nickel guy that maybe you could throw at safety and have good production, whatever. But Buda Baker really took over this year. Commanded respect in the locker room, was like a captain for them. I mean, he's big time. And he could do a little bit of everything, but he started to take the little bit of everything and take it to like here where he was playing like elite football in all areas of the safety position. So when I look at him, I think he definitely is warranted the respect. Now, Justin Simmons is interesting because he's playing in Vic Fangio's defense. So essentially, Justin Simmons is doing what Eddie Jackson was doing. And why is Eddie Jackson being talked about? Well, Eddie Jackson is being used as a box safety in Chicago, which is just mind-blowing to me. I really like Chuck Pagano as a defensive mind. I don't understand why Eddie Jackson isn't being used to the fullest. And this is Eddie Jackson that we're talking about. That was a defensive player of the year candidate going back when he was with Fangio. Now Fangio takes Justin Simmons and uses him as that kind of single high safety, the center fielder, shows off that, that overall, the range. I mean, when you and I watched Eddie Jackson, we're like, this guy's the best safety in football, like a few years ago, because he would literally cut off all avenues of the field. And now we're not even talking about him. And Justin Simmons is doing that. And Justin Simmons also has Bryce Callahan, best nickel corner in the game. He's now got Kyle Fuller has come over, who was with Fangio in Chicago. They had Chris Harris Jr. the last few years. He was with the Chargers last year. They've done a good job bringing in talent. So I definitely do like what Fangio is doing. And to me, I don't want to penalize Justin Simmons because of it, but I feel like a guy like Derwin has been asked to do more. I feel like a guy like Jesse Bates is being asked to do way more. I feel like Minka is being asked to do way more. So it's not necessarily a knock on Justin Simmons' ability or talent. It's just the fact, like, if we're splitting hairs here and I have to break a tie, I'm going to go with the guy that's doing more with less around him than the guy that's doing maybe just the same with more around him, if that makes sense. And that's my biggest, it's not really a knock on Simmons. It's just how I'm breaking the tie. I'd even make the argument for John Johnson, as much as I love the guy and he really elevated his play. He was playing next to, this past season, he was playing next to Jordan Fuller, a rookie that really rose to the occasion. he's a name you're going to want to watch out for, as well as Burgess for years to come. But John Johnson was playing off of guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Williams, guys we mentioned in the previous bit. So that would be my argument against Justin Simmons being one. And I stand by that. I think those guys do more with less around them. And I think Justin Simmons doesn't necessarily do less with more, but I think he does just about the same, or maybe marginally a little bit more with more around him.
Fair enough.
That's
Makes
the
sense.
best way I can put that.
No, that makes sense.
All right, well, let's catch up on the comments, and then we'll wrap this up here. Okay, let's see. I don't remember where we were, but Gilmore fell down the ranks. Gilmore trying to get paid while his game deteriorates. I think corners will be like wide receivers in 5 years. Bunch of good man-to-man corners coming out of college. Steelers do defense well. You don't like Buda Baker. Safety with 9 sacks doesn't speak well on defensive line or even edge guys. LOL. Jesse out of Wake Forest, correct? Yes, that is correct. Although Nolan answered that. Look out for dude at KC, dude at Green Bay. Adams is another version of Taylor Rapp. Move him to linebacker. Minka Fitz is a damn fine player. I wanted to draft Derwin James. Kept saying if he slips to the teens, we should go get him. I like Buddha. Man, Blitz Boy doesn't do it for me. I'm assuming you're talking about Jamal Adams. We need to keep our eye on BC War Eagles. a little bit of love for a Lion. Nice, says one funky Lions fan. Walker is definitely a solid and could take a huge step moving forward this year. I agree. Steelers got to be 10-0 versus the Bengals the last 5 years. None of the Cincy players stick out. Fangio, dude, is going to have an impressive football tree. Staley was phenomenal for a first-year DC. Denver is a really good team. I think much like Daniel Jones, Drew Lock has talent, can really play. John Johnson, I want to see. I'm hoping for him, but that Browns luck and guys that leave AD just don't do well. One last guy I will mention, L'Jarius Sneed with the Chiefs. He's a rookie last year. He just balled out. He got hurt, but that season, he was by far the best secondary player. I thought he was better than Tyrann Mathieu, in my opinion. So that's a name to watch moving forward, L'Jarius Sneed. Do you have any other guys that you want to mention? I know the Steelers one I did not even know about. So,
no, not really. Not right now.
Yeah, I right off the top of my head right now, I can't really think of anyone. And talking about rookies, I mean, we've already talked about that so much, but
they went offense too much anyways. So there's not really any new blood in there on defense.
Yeah. Sneed, we could have drafted him. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it. Unless you have anything else.
I'm good.
All right, guys. Well, this has been episode 19 of the AJ Show. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Adam Grego, aka Adam Steele, and we are signing off until next Sunday. We will hit the 20th episode, and we'll just do another one. So, you guys take care. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you guys in a week.